Welcome to SKNIS Perspectives,
an interactive program of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, aired weekly on this radio station.
Government's People Employment Program helps young people to find jobs or get trained.
We are heading to 800 persons as of this morning.
Project Manager of PEP, Jeffrey Handley, sits down with us to update the implementation and structure of the program. He also talks about the overwhelming response to the initiative and its sustainability. I'm Ian Richards. Perspectives begins right now. Thank you for joining us. Enhancing livelihoods, improving productivity. That's the theme for Government's People Employment Program, or PEP. Jeffrey Handley is the PEP project manager.
The People's Employment Program is a government initiative which will contribute to the national, social and economic transformation by the establishment of various projects that primarily will provide employment opportunities for qualifying nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis. There are 6 areas that we would have been focusing on, namely engaging qualified interns project. That's what we call the EQUIP. Those are those persons who would have graduated with some CXCs 5 and above and associate degrees, etc. We have the National Infrastructure Improvement Project, acronym NIP. Here is where we are going to be seeing some of our young persons engage in small projects that will be attached to whether schools or even government buildings in terms of minor repairs and renovations, also working alongside with Public Works Department in terms of fixing sidewalks and those small projects. Then we have the STED, that is skills training and entrepreneurial development. Here is where we are providing the opportunity for young people to be trained in a number of skills based on their requests. Some would have already started in hospitality, hairdressing, firefighting, mechanics and carpentry. And we are going to be rolling out a number of other initiatives, upholstery, as we go along. And then we have the WISE, Women in Small Enterprise. Some persons were fortunate on International Women's Day, which was on Friday, where the first 20 persons that were interviewed, they were able to receive their grant towards enhancing their business. And this will grow because from information, there is over 100 persons who would have applied for the WISE, and they too will be dealt with. Then we have the ATM, that's the Agri-Enterprise Training and Management Project. This is the agricultural project where we are going to be training some young persons in the hydroponic farming, and then we are also going to be placing some of these persons who would have indicated their interest in agriculture to establish farmers who would have them working on their farms and also providing them with some training. A request has also come in from the Ministry of Agriculture as they try to enhance the school gardening project. So we are going to be assigning young persons to each school in terms of developing and enhancing and creating, if none is the school garden, no matter how small the size of the area that they are going to do. And we would have launched already in the 3rd week now the Women's in Construction Trade. That's a group of women who indicated their love for construction, and we would have been able to facilitate them. And they are already in their 3rd week of training, and then they are going to be going into the hardcore construction because they say they want to run the blocks, they want to run the tile, they want to do the plumbing. So we are going to be providing those training for those persons.
Let's back up a bit though in terms of PEP. Tell us a bit about when it was launched.
PEP was launched in December of last year, but the rollout officially in terms of placement started on the 12th of January this year.
Between now and then, how many applications have come in?
We have in our database over 2,000 applications from since the inception.
That number is a very large number. Is it what was expected, or is it a bit more than was expected?
Much more than what we anticipated or expected. Originally, the target was 1,000 persons that we are trying to get out by the 14th, and we are on target. Hopefully everything should work out well so that we can meet that. And then, of course, Ian, we will have to go back to the drawing board, because with another 1,000 persons to service, it would mean then that we'll have to look at how we can capture as many of those persons, because as you know, originally the program was designed to assist with the unemployment. And if we are saying that this is a number of persons we have unemployed, I'm quite certain that the government will do whatever it has to do at this time to ensure that the majority of these persons are placed. Although we have over 2,000, some of them are duplicates, and some persons would have already started working outside of the PEP program.
Okay, so tell us then, in terms of the 1,000 that was accommodated for, how many have been placed and how many are currently in training?
Well, as we speak right now, total including training and those persons who would have been assigned, we are heading to 800 persons as of this morning. There are some persons who have been out there before in terms of training that we are taking them out of training now and putting them in business places.
How would you say the response has been from the private sector? Because, of course, I would imagine that there is a willingness, since that it is a government program, for the public sector to, do as much as they can to accommodate persons. What about the private sector themselves? How have they responded?
Well, the private sector, they have responded well. I believe, though, that there are a number of others who can come on board, because it's an initiative that you are helping and I am helping, in the sense that if your establishment would require 10 persons, I would provide you with the 10 persons, and those are 10 people that you would not have to be paying. So it's an opportunity for the business places as well to save. What we find happening is that there are a number of small businesses, registered businesses, that would have been asking us to assist in terms of probably a waiter or a hairdresser, a receptionist, which we are trying to make sure that we meet those demands.
You mentioned the areas with regards to, such as the women in small enterprise and also the skills training and entrepreneurial development. But I know that Minister Carty, who of course is the Minister of Information, was expressing that there was some concern with regard to the numbers of women who applied for particularly the construction and also the small enterprise. How do those numbers look to you now going forward? Because that would have been a while since he made the statement.
Well, in reference to the WISE, we have over 100 persons who would have applied. And I'm thinking that after you would have done the publicity that we would have done, and the fact that it's going to be on the radio and television, that these persons would have already received money, I'm quite certain that we're going to see an increase in persons, because there might have been people who might have been thinking, oh, this is not going to happen, they're only talking, but now they would have seen the reality. I am convinced that we would see an increase in those persons within the WISE. With the women in construction, it's a buzz in that area, not a large or overwhelming number, because our initial training started with 12, but then we are now picking up that there are others who are now saying that they would want to be in that training. So we are looking at developing another training session for those persons. So we are thinking that at the end we might be able to have whether 20, 30 women who would be qualified to some extent in the construction industry.
Well, you mentioned, of course, that there are some persons with regard to WISE who may want to come on board. Is that possible, considering that it's already oversubscribed?
Well, you never say never. And I am of the view, and I believe, because of what we are trying to do in terms of ensuring that as many persons benefit, I believe that we will be able to facilitate. What might happen is that the amount in terms of the monies, the top figure, that might in some cases be reduced in order to facilitate other persons, bearing in mind that the monies that would be loaned would be based on your needs. So it's not everybody who would be qualified or would definitely need $2,500. Some persons might just need $1,000. So the other $1,500 that an individual could have gotten, that can then go towards somebody else. So it all boils down at the end of the interviewing based on the need of the persons.
And how were the persons who were selected? I'm speaking overall now, of course. How was it decided who will be attached, who will be trained with the oversubscription again? Was it on a first-come, first-served basis, or was there some sort of specific criteria?
What we did, because the program started in December, we pulled all those applicants who would have applied in December, and we tried to facilitate them in terms of getting out. I would admit that there are some persons who would have applied in December but would not have gotten a placement as yet, and that is because of several things. One, the area of interest. We have not yet reached around in terms of developing that. What we would have found that some of those persons would have called in and said, I applied in December and I know I signed up to be a teacher, but if that is not available, I would not mind doing something else, and we were able to place them in other areas, because the whole idea about the program is to provide these persons with training that would be able to make them a better person. So even if they don't get what they initially wanted, going in another area, they might just find themselves falling in love with that particular area.
And is it just technical training, or is there a social component to it as well?
There is a social component where the persons would go into social life skills training, and there's cross-cutting in terms of training, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and safety in terms of on the job and that kind of stuff. So we decided to go that route rather than just pushing them into those specific areas. So what you find happening now, those persons who would have been in those training now for the past 3 weeks, I believe that their skills would have sharpened and they're now ready and prepared to go into their area, whether it's hospitality, whether it is early childhood, because we would have gotten some requests from early childhood in terms of teachers, nursery assistants and that kind of stuff. So we are trying to ensure that these persons are in a position for whatever task might be at hand for them.
And what would you say has been the most popular area requested in terms of persons looking for assignment in that area?
I would have to say hospitality. So that has been the oversubscribed area right now in terms of training. So what we would have started doing with some of them when we are calling them is to try to find out specifically what areas in hospitality, because sometimes you find persons just say hospitality because of hospitality, but there are different areas in terms of whether you want to do front desk, you want to work in banquet facilities and those kind of stuff. So we are trying to now ensure that we do the training centered around those areas. There was also a cry, not an alarming one, but we try to engage them in secretarial. But we did not just want to put them in secretarial to learn the typing or the computer. We recognize that there are certain skills, soft skills that businesses are looking for, that we think that once we do this training, they can benefit. For example, the secretarial training, they're going to be a QuickBook component of it, payroll in terms of how you do your payroll, and the kind of basic information that is important to a day-to-day running of an office.
Was that surprising that hospitality turned out to be the most requested?
Not really. I guess it's because hospitality has been a buzzword in these parts, and especially because of the introduction of these new hotels that's coming on stream and that kind of stuff. So I believe persons are trying to make sure that they equip themselves so that when the hotel open up, they can make themselves marketable in terms of getting a full-time employment.
And what observations would you have made about the persons who would have applied to PEP?
What I've realized is that there are a number of persons who are passionate about getting an opportunity to be placed or trained, and they would call you regularly to ensure that you don't forget them. On the other hand, there are some persons who opportunities would have been given to, but from interacting with them, you then pick up that they're not quite serious about employment. So this is something that we had to address at the early stages in our orientation. We first showed them the importance of earning some money, and we went through savings and the benefit that they can gain from this employment opportunity or training. And sad to say, some of these persons are persons who have children. So I had to indicate to some of them, you have to do this for your children or your child, because if you don't work, or if you continue not to show an interest in working or wanting to work, what is going to become of your child?
And did it work?
To most parts, I can say yes, because I have not yet received any bad complaints in terms of persons not showing up to their training sessions and even on their job.
You hinted at it earlier, but what would you say is the overall feedback that you would have gotten from the ministries and the businesses that would have taken persons on for PEP? Are they generally satisfied, or do they feel that, of course, there's still some more work that needs to be done?
Well, to be quite honest, Ian, I must say that the feedback that we have been receiving, both personally and even calling the office from persons who would have been already assigned, is that persons are congratulating us on the quality of persons that we are sending out there. Persons have been making the generalization or the comment that this is totally different to the YES program, in the sense that the C persons are working. You're not hearing no major concern or cry out from even those persons who are at the parks and beaches, unlike in previous time persons used to be talking about by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock they finish work. That is not happening, because we would have put a number of mechanisms in place in terms of better supervision and more visits and dialogues with these persons. So the feedback from the general public in most parts have been real positive. I believe from the office standpoint, which we would have started doing, is that we have to be a little bit more probably proactive or quicker in the placements. For example, if a company asks you for someone, I believe in a matter of 2 days, we should be able to service that person. It's not that we can't, but what is happening is that sometimes the requests based on the guidelines or the stipulations that the persons are looking for, sometimes it's difficult to find those persons in our database with those kind of experience. So what we have been asking these businesses to do is that even though Mary Jones might not possess the necessary skills that you might be looking for, but she has a willingness to learn, we are asking you to take them on and do the training, because the idea is to train as many persons as possible. If you would have done that for a week or 2 weeks and you realize that the person is not really cut out for that, then you notify us at the office and then we'll try to do a replacement or relocation of the individual. But it's difficult for someone looking at a job and be sent to a place, and because they don't have 1 year experience in the specific area, they are told that they do not meet the criteria. So we are trying to make sure that the employers recognize that it's a training opportunity, and I must say that there's some persons who would have said, send them and I will work with them.
Mr. Hanley, how long will PEP run for?
Well, initially PEP would have been designed for 6 months, but I'm quite certain that it would be extended. And my thinking is that when the year started with a similar life, 6 months, and the years lasted almost 2 years. So I am thinking if we would have been able to do better practices, learning from the mistakes that we would have made in the yes, and this is something we have been emphasizing on the participants. The life of the project depends on them in terms of their interests, their passion, and the need for them to turn the opportunity into a golden eagle. If they don't want that, then there is no way an employer going to keep you and have somebody paying you for not doing anything.
Project Manager for PEP, Jeffrey Hanley. If you would like more information about the program, then you can visit www.sknpep.com, or of course you can go to the office at Dorset. That's all the time we have for our program. I am Ian Richards. Thank you very much for joining us.
We're pleased that you joined us for this edition of SKNIS Perspectives. Join us every week at this same time on this radio station.
This program is produced by the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.